Hi, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk Chicago. My name's Jon Zaghloul. Great to have you here on Channel 59.3 BPOD TV and Roku. Will the Bears trade Khalil Mack? Pretty big question. Been circulating rumors going about, and we're going to break it all down in just a second. Before we get started, make sure you follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jon Z Sports and on Facebook, Jon Zaghloul. If you want to watch more of this show, search up Sports Talk Chicago on YouTube or go to sportstalkchicago.com. If you want to watch more shows from the BPOD TV network, search up BPOD TV on YouTube. I want to start today with this. How do we define a disappointment? There are many different definitions out there, some of which make sense, some of them not, to be honest. People who say Mitch Trubisky is a disappointment, well, depends on how you evaluate him. Maybe his position, right, draft position at number 2, yes, but did he play bad? Was he Jamarcus Russell or Ryan Leaf? No way. So we have to really understand what the definition is before we could use the term. Heard a lot of people lately with these Khalil Mack trade rumors starting to sprout up, say that, oh, he's a disappointment, waste of money, bad move. The Bears should definitely trade him. He's getting old, he sucks now. What's the definition, in your eyes, of a disappointment? Look, I get it. Big money contract, right? 6 years, $130 million about. A lot of money guaranteed. Bears pulled off a trade, gave up tons of draft picks to get him. And at the time, thought it was a great move. Khalil Mack, all-pro defensive guy. Thought he could really help out the defense, and he did. I'll explain why in a second, but he did. Then again, hindsight's 2020. The whole point of the trade was to make sure the Bears would contend for years to come. Khalil Mack was supposed to be a part of this team, and the Bears were supposed to build up a good defensive core that would last for years, not a year. Ryan Pace had a vision, but this team was just about in their window to win, and sure enough, they were in 2018. They fell off. Now we sit here today, 2022, with Khalil Mack, older, a bloated contract, and no Super Bowls. Go figure. I want to argue today that Khalil Mack is not necessarily a disappointment or a bust, and there's a pretty good reason why the Bears shouldn't trade him. But I want to get it out there that for those of you who say he's a disappointment, what do you mean by that? I encourage you to comment and let me know, what do you mean by that? What do you mean he's a disappointment? Does that mean he didn't live up to your expectations? Does that mean he didn't live up to the money? Or does that mean he was a total bust? I have a different feeling about disappointment and how it relates to Khalil Mack. It's not Khalil Mack's fault that the Bears completely went sideways. It's not his fault that Matt Nagy sabotaged his offensive players, leading to him being fired. It's not his fault that Ryan Pace mortgaged way too much of the future, not just in his trade, but in other trades, to hurt his team, to set the Bears behind. Not his fault that Mitch Trubisky was drafted over maybe Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. It's not his fault that after 1 year, the Bears could not repeat what they did in 2018. If you look at the numbers, he never really dropped off significantly. 12.5 sacks, first year here in Chicago, All-Pro, Pro Bowler, 8.5, then 9, and then 6 last year in 7 games. 6 sacks in 7 games for the Bears last year. Didn't play bad. Extremely productive. That, to me, those numbers don't sound like a disappointment. Doesn't sound like he was a total bust, bad trade, one of the worst trades in Bears history. Ryan Pace made a horrible move. No. Khalil Mack can't control the factors that surrounded the team. That's why we have to be really careful when we use the word disappointment or bust, or if they didn't live up to expectations, whose expectations and what happened around them. The Bears certainly, these past 4 years, did not live up to expectations. Ryan Pace, when he made this trade, had a vision. The vision was to 3 to 7 year window, great team, dynasty, Super Bowl. I remember the day the Bears traded for Khalil Mack. Everybody said, wow, they're going to be a Super Bowl winner. And sure enough, that year, I firmly believe they could have made it, if not won it. But didn't make it back. What does that have to do with Khalil Mack? Was he that integral to the team, to the point where he controlled whether or not they make a Super Bowl? Sorry, not really. He's a great defensive player, one of the best in football. And according to the numbers I see here, his performance didn't drop off significantly. Wasn't like how it was in Oakland at the time, but it was still great. Still more than above average. Still quality, and still helped the Bears win games. You can't blame a guy for having a bad team around him. You can't blame a guy for having team expectations not reach where they were supposed to be. I'm not going to blame Khalil Mack for the Bears not winning the Super Bowl or not winning multiple division titles. It has nothing to do with him. And if you want to point to his progress or his stats and say, look, he's gotten worse and worse and worse, well, injuries play a role, but even more than that, the team got worse and worse and worse, not just him. And for his age, at 30 years old, to put up 6 sacks in 7 games, it's obvious he was not getting worse, progressively worse. It was about right where he should be. Maybe a tiny bit worse than Oakland, but not much. Wasn't to the point where, oh my gosh, this was a horrible trade, he's turned into a bust. It wasn't Robert Quinn his first year here in Chicago. Khalil Mack never sunk to that level. Never. Not once do we even mention that or think about it. So I want to make sure that gets stated. You might think he let you down, didn't live up to expectations. It wasn't Khalil Mack, it was the team. Can't expect some sort of defensive guy to win you a Super Bowl. Not how it works. Khalil Mack played his heart out for 4 seasons here. He's done great, pretty much. Not his fault that the Bears haven't won a Super Bowl, haven't been there, and have tanked it. It's not his fault. So I want to get that out there first. There's been a couple of reports that have suggested that the Bears may want to trade him. Could get back some valuable draft capital in this year's draft. Bears obviously have no first-round picks. Here's a quote from Bleacher Nation. This breaks down more so the finances, the economics behind it. I want to make sure I read this before I give my reaction. Quote, to be clear, trading Mack solely for the sake of saving cap space and draft capital would be problematic. Mostly from the perspective of realizing that trading Mack before June 1st would clear just $6.15 million in cap space. That would be welcome wiggle room under the cap for a Bears team already with $26 million to work with, according to OverTheCaps.com calculations, but it would come with a dead money hit of $24 million. So if you trade Khalil Mack between now and June 1st, it's a dead cap hit of $26 million. The Bears could deal Mack after June 1st, which would spread the dead money hit over 2 years and give the Bears $17.75 million in newfound cap space, but they wouldn't be able to use that money until after June 1st. New league free agency, all that starts up next week. So, what do we think? Do we think it's feasible to trade Khalil Mack, and for what? We all know this draft, too, isn't as strong as people make it out to be. I mean, at least the quarterback class, and the majority of experts have said this is not the draft that it was a year ago, 2 years ago. The Bears need, of course, wide receiver, secondary help, O-line. They have a lot of picks, just not in round 1. And trading Khalil Mack for a $26 million dead cap hit just for a wide receiver, sorry, I'm not sure it's worth it. I'm really not sure it's worth giving up that much cap space, that much of a hit, just to get a first-round pick for a wide receiver. And let me back that up, too. Do we know the Bears will get a first-round pick for Khalil Mack? I don't think so. Not when you're taking on the remainder of that contract that he has, and his performance. Nobody's going to give up a first-round pick for somebody who's a little bit past his prime, who's 30 years old, and who has such a bloated contract still to come that has to be paid out. I don't care what the justification is, whether it be for draft picks, whatever it might be, no one's going to agree to that trade. If they did, they'd be stupid. It wouldn't make any sense. Wouldn't make any sense from a financial perspective for any other team involved. I mean, they'd be a loser in that trade no matter what. They'd give up draft picks and have to pay a 30-year-old middle linebacker's contract? Come on. That makes no sense. That'd be a stupid move, a stupid football IQ move, front office move. So we have to really understand how realistic this trade could be. Very little. The Bears can't just cut ties and do it. It's not that simple. This isn't Major League Baseball, even the NBA to an extent. You got a salary cap, a big salary cap here. And the Bears need space for things that they actually need. They need cornerback help, safety help, O-line. They need wide receivers big time. I don't think it makes sense to absorb a $24 million cap hit just to get rid of Khalil Mack. There's a difference here, too. Mack has still been relatively productive. Not like he's been bad or been a total bust. I'll take 6 sacks in 7 games any day. Makes no sense. Just another rumor from the internet about what the Bears are going to do. Doesn't make sense to me. A GM would look at this scenario and say, you got to be kidding me, right? If any team actually agreed to this trade, I'd say they're stupid. And I cover the Bears here. I'd say they're stupid. They'd lose the trade automatically. You're giving up draft picks. You're paying for Khalil Mack's salary. And he's 30 years old? For what? There's no way you need somebody on defense that bad. I'd rather go to the draft at that point. Even if the draft class is weaker, I'd rather draft somebody who's younger and develop him and pay a lot of money for Khalil Mack and give up draft capital. It wouldn't make any sense. It just wouldn't. Logically, it wouldn't. I understand there's some Bears fans who are frustrated and unhappy with his performance. For whatever reason, I really don't know. But you have to admit, even if you don't like what he's done in a Bears uniform, trading him wouldn't make sense for anybody. Nobody would accept that trade. Now, if that did happen, somehow, I'd feel bad for the team that got him. I really would. For the team that put up draft capital and is willing to pay his salary, that'd be stupid. And for the Bears, it'd be stupid too, though. $24 million cap hit when they have a lot of cap space for the first time in a while. 40+ million. I just don't like the idea. And I think it wouldn't make sense. Again, remember, how do we determine what a disappointment is, what a bust is? You could say Khalil Mack got a bit overpaid. You could say Ryan Pace maybe jumped the boat in the trade. But based on performance, based on statistics, Khalil Mack has not played bad by any stretch. He's not been a bust or hasn't been worth it in that sense. It's not his fault the Bears did nothing while he was here. Certainly wasn't Mack's fault. It's not like, oh, he only had 2 sacks. It's all on him. That's why the Bears went 8-8 a couple of years. That's why they went 6-11 this past year. That's why they lost in the divisional round of the playoffs in 2018. Khalil Mack had nothing to do with the Bears' problems the past 4 years. Nothing. Maybe he was hurt too much. Maybe that hurt the team late down the stretch. Other than that, there's nothing bad or negative that he's done on the field that's hurt the team. I mean, I can't think of one example where there's been a boneheaded play, a blown game, all because of Khalil Mack. Very rarely, if ever, did that happen. He's been here for 4 years. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer anyway. So claiming he's a disappointment, claiming, oh, the contract is bloated, get rid of him, well, wouldn't really help. Wouldn't really help at all. The Bears would still have to absorb the dead cap hit. And they'd lose Khalil Mack. Well, he's been pretty, relatively productive. It doesn't make sense to do it. I don't know who's perpetuating this sort of rumor, but I mean, just think logically here, right? Think logically. What GM and the NFL, these are smart people. We're talking about people from Ivy League schools with economics degrees who can actually sit there and say, you know what? Let me trade for a 30-year-old middle linebacker who is already going to be 31 years old. I'm going to have to give up big draft capital for him. I'm going to have to pay his salary. Then the Bears are going to say, yeah, we'll do it, and we'll take on a $24 million cap hit. No, it ain't going to work. I don't know where these rumors come from or who originates them. Maybe agents or content creators, whomever it might be. It doesn't make any sense. Economically, it makes no sense to do. Unless the Bears are willing to wait after June 1st, I guess. I mean, maybe it makes some sense then. They'd give the Bears $17.75 million in newfound cap space, but the problem there is free agency starts next week. The draft is going to be over, long gone by June 1st and afterwards. So what are you going to get for Khalil Mack? Unless you hope a team misses out on who they want in free agency and the draft, and you could convince somebody to still take on that salary and that money and give you future draft picks for 2023? It makes no sense. The Bears need draft picks today. Trading Khalil Mack, having a $24 million cap hit for draft picks is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It wouldn't be a good idea for both teams involved. And Khalil Mack has not been a disappointment either. Might have been overpaid a bit too much, but I'll tell you this much, it's not his fault where the Bears are today. He's done everything he's supposed to do, by far. The only thing I could think of in which I've been a bit disappointed in him is the injuries, but everybody deals with that. Everybody. There's no need to trade him. Look, you're stuck with the contract. I would just deal with it and eat it up and pay. It's better than having a dead cap hit. It's better than paying for somebody who isn't even on your roster. And he's productive, too. So he's productive. Why not pay him? Versus the alternative. Trading him, dead cap hit for what? Draft picks? And you think the other team's going to pay his salary for the rest of the contract? Come on. This isn't Madden. It's the NFL. Can't be going on auto GM and saying, oh yeah, he has to every trade. Not how it works. So somebody who came up with this rumor, wherever it might be, whoever originated it, is playing Madden football GM. Madden 22 GM. It doesn't make any sense to do this. And where the idea came from, I can't even conceive. When I saw this headline, I'm like, what? Khalil Mack? Where's he going to go? Where exactly is Khalil Mack going to go? Still productive at age 30. And which team's going to pay for somebody at age 30 and give up draft picks instead? Then if the Bears eat the dead cap. Just don't understand sometimes. I don't get it. I don't get where some of these rumors come from and where people insinuate things that just aren't true or won't happen. Look, if it does, all the best to both teams. Because really, it's a lose-lose situation. The Bears will lose because they'll pay that $24 million in dead cap. The team who acquires him loses because they give up draft picks for a 30-year-old middle linebacker, going to be 31, who has injury problems, and has to pay the salary. Doesn't make sense for anybody. It'd be a stupid move all the way around. Khalil Mack is staying. And hopefully, with a new head coach, new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, new team in general, he could be utilized even better, have a great resurgence. Because he did good this year till he got hurt. And look, I don't know what the truth is, but I will say this. I find it hard to believe that he just sat out the rest of the year due to injuries only. Obviously, like Justin Fields near the end of the year, wasn't played because it's not worth it. It's not worth getting beat up in games that don't matter. So when the Bears start off 0-0 come 2022, and he's back and healthy, and the Bears still have him on the field, and there's a new team, I would hope things get better for him. But he's not a disappointment, first and foremost. Had nothing to do with where the Bears are today and what had to happen for change to happen. And to make this trade would be utterly stupid for everybody involved, whether it be another team, whether it be the Bears. So let's talk about the facts here before we assume the worst, or assume the best, I guess, depending on how you look at it. It's not happening. I'm not a GM and I can tell you that. It's not happening. So if I were you Bears fans, I'd look forward to seeing Khalil Mack on the field come 2022. Because if he gets traded, that would be the most head-scratching move of this offseason. Both teams lose, and nobody wants that. Thanks for watching today's show here at BPOD TV, channel 59.3 in Roku. Really appreciate the time. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jon Z Sports and on Facebook at Jon Zaghloul. If you want to watch more of the show, search up Sports Talk Chicago on YouTube or tune in here every night at 10:30 on BPOD TV. So long, everyone.